Everybody. Welcome to another episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. I'm your host, Chris Noble, and today we have a special guest, Oliver Dolby. Now, Oliver is a transformational healer, and he's the creator of the etheric trauma release method, which we'll learn more about in this episode today. It's essentially a powerful system that blends energy work, consciousness science, and elemental wisdom to clear deep emotional and energetic blockages. Now, echoing the practices of ancient mystery schools, ancient wisdom, Oliver's work harnesses the four sacred elements earth, water, air, and fire to restore balance and harmony across the body, mind, and spirit. Through this process, Oliver has helped lots of people release attachments to past traumas, dissolve limiting beliefs, and to transmute stagnant energy into renewed vitality, clarity, and empowerment. There's some fascinating connections with ancient Egypt as well that we'll get into in this episode. We'll dive into some of the ancient wisdom, but we're also going to talk about some practical things that we can bring to your everyday life on this journey of discovery and of self-awareness, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. We're going to get into some fascinating topics today in this episode. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show Oliver Dolby. Oliver, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you, Chris, for the invitation. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So right before I started recording, I know we were talking a little bit about some fascinating things with Egypt, which I teased our audience there in the intro. We'll talk a bit about that today. We're going to talk about this fascinating methodology that you've created here, and also before we get into all of that, I love to always ask our guests, how did you get to where you are today? And obviously that's a long story, but if you could kind of summarize this very specific journey that you've obviously gone on to bring yourself to where you are today. I know these stories are always very fascinating because it's essentially a story of awakening, right? It's a story of coming into many awarenesses that you probably didn't have when you started off this lifetime, or maybe you did, Oliver. I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear, what has your journey been to get you today to where we are right now?
Right. I start off very differently. My background is a rock climbing instructor, so nothing to do
Wow.
with the mysteries at all. But it did give me a lot of time meditating on a rock, if you will. So that's
Wow.
where rock climbing very much is. You can't be worrying about the world, otherwise you fall off. So you're very much focused in a meditative state while you're climbing. That's really what got me into this. It got me into it uh, going back. It's about 30 years now, and that's where I first started. I could not see energy. I could not feel energy. But through a gradual awakening and through certain people that were pivotal in my journey, allow me to meet and introduce me to other healers, that started this sort of fascination with the idea that there's more to the physical body than just the physical body that we see, that there's actually energy around us. And that when we tap into that energy, we can actually do some very profound healings very, very quickly. My journey was up and down. There were days when I was loving it and days when I was hating it. I met people who could see energy, who could feel energy, who could sense and know energy, could hear energy. And I couldn't. I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. I just had this trust inside of me that allowed me to trust what I was doing was working. And then I'd see the feedback and the changes in those clients that I worked with. It started off obviously with the friends and family, and then the few clients start to come on board, and they start to love the work I was doing and coming back for more. And that is the journey that I've been on. And it's taken me from studying very holistic practices, then also very ancient practices, and then realizing in the last sort of 10 years or so that we need to update what we're doing so that it's in line with the 21st century. So can we take a healing that would take a year to do? Can we bring that down into something like a week? And the answer is yes, you can. And as I started to delve in and start to work with myself and shifting and clearing my own beliefs, my own layers, my own traumas, my own fears, my own pains, when I started to shift and look at life from that perspective, to see what I did on myself, how that helped me, I then started to move what I was doing for myself onto my clients. And then I started to notice real changes in them and at the same time myself. So it's been a road that's been long. There's been some hardships. There's been tough calls. There's been some pain. And there's been loads of mistakes as well, where I've done things completely wrong and not got it right. But today, I have managed to figure out what really works and what doesn't work, and take what works, turn it into something that's practical, fast, efficient for the 21st century. Because life around of us is super fast. You download a book on your phone or tablet instantaneously. You don't wait 2 weeks for it to be delivered anymore. You want them straight away. And so we want things to happen straight away. We've got this access to this incredible world where things are speeding up exponentially every single day, technology. So why does our healing have to be stuck in the old? Why can't our healing also match and mirror the speed of the 21st century? And so that's what got me thinking about how can I create a modality, a form of healing that can really shift people very, very quickly, instantaneously, if they choose. And that's where I came up with the etheric trauma release method. Trial and error, and working on myself, working hard on myself. And this process has now led me to be able to see energy, to feel it, to know it, to hear it sometimes. And so all those thousands of hours have started to pay off as I've started to connect more with myself, and also connecting now with other times, other dimensions, other planes of existence, if you will. So that, in a nutshell, is a 30-year journey.
I love that. Thank you, Oliver. It's fascinating because everyone's journey is so individual, right? It's so unique, and at the same time, I think we find commonalities, in this journey where there's a lot of trial and error. And I think, working around these mindsets that likely most of us start off with, which is mistakes are not a good thing. Well, of course, how do you learn? How do you innovate without these things? And like I like how you're taking a lot of this, let's say some ancient wisdom practices, which I want to ask you about in a second, and taking a modern twist on it, because that's what we need ultimately. On the show here on Ancient Mysteries Unearthed, we love to talk about the past and all the cool, crazy mysteries that are so fascinating about who we are as a species. However, if we don't integrate it into our right here, right now, present moment, what's the point ultimately, right? Like there's no real point. And I think the point is, how can we use this to better our lives now? So what's been your inspiration from maybe an ancient civilizations or an ancient culture's perspective that you've been able to take from and then how have you molded it to fit this modern day and age now?
Well, it goes back to a time about 25 years ago now, 25, 26 years ago. And I was studying hypnosis and NLP and timeline therapy. And I was sitting in a session, and I had this time where I could sense or know that I was inside a pyramid, okay, inside a Egyptian pyramid. But it wasn't a good place to be, because in that moment, I realized that I was about to perform some sort of sacrifice. And I didn't want to do it, but I was being forced to do it. It was like times had changed, that the light that was there was not the true light that it should be. And as I was going through this process, I saw myself about to sacrifice. And I asked myself, is this the right way to be doing things? Is this the way to be an enlightened being? And in that moment, I decided that it wasn't. And I shifted. Something in me switched on. And rather than perform the sacrifice, I took myself out of the situation where I was then, in this vision, sacrificed by the elders, the higher up, those in charge, for not performing this rite. But that changed something. That really changed something. And that's when I realized that if we can change the way we think about things, change our beliefs about certain things, change our beliefs about our topics that we're really passionate about, then everything changes. Everything changes very quickly. Moving on to about 5, 6 years ago now, I really had to do some deep work. and I started connecting to, once again, to ancient Egypt, but this time to the goddess Isis. The goddess Isis, Isis of the left-hand path, as she likes to be referred to. And that really was an awakening again, because I realized that my belief had been that a man could not connect to the goddess path. And she kept going to me, this is wrong, you can, because we're male and female. All of us come from the masculine and feminine energy. That's the way we're here. So we have male and female energy inside of us. We just need to be in balance. And when we're in balance, we can connect to whatever form, God, goddess, we wish to. And so she really then took me and said, right, you've got to start changing your beliefs. You've got to start showing people that there's a different way. That when you do change your beliefs, when you do disconnect from that idea, that indoctrination, that teaching that we've learned from our parents, from our school teachers, from our communities, from our workplace, where we've just subtly taken on all these beliefs. When you start to change your beliefs, then the world around you changes, and you change, and then the world around you changes. And as I started to learn, and she started to teach me certain new ways of doing the old things. So taking those old ancient rituals that they would have performed and moving that into the 21st century, changing the energy, because we've changed energy. As you know, we've changed from the sort of very masculine energy, the heavy energy of the past, into this much more feminine, much more divine feminine energy. And the idea, of course, is not to forget about the masculine, but is to bring balance to the masculine and the feminine, and bring balance to both of them. And then when you're in that balanced state, you're able to really live your life from that higher perspective, to shift yourself out of the heaviness of the old and then start to live in that higher plane energy. So using and using tools, using rituals, using processes, using certain meditations to really, really shift the beliefs of the old into the new. And I always talk about it being a movement into the 21st century, so that we can't be stuck on the 19th and the 20th century like we have been, like our ancestors have been, like all the generations before us. We've got to now reinvent in the 21st century. And every single one of us is doing that. But are we doing it on the new belief, or an old safe belief, or a belief that we thought was safe, rather than testing out new beliefs, testing out new processes, changing things? And so I've really, really shifted that focus. And it was really thanks to the goddess, plus the other pantheon of gods and goddesses that I've met and connected with energetically. Ra, Horus, Isis, obviously, goddess Nut. There's loads. Plus, then once I started exploring those pantheons, I started access to others, and I started to sense other beings. And that really led me to start to turn on the sight and start to sense and see the energies, the beings around us that are always around us if we're looking. So that's pretty much what I do.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating, Oliver, because I've been trying to get a grasp on who these gods are for a long, long time. It started one of my initial curiosities into this whole ancient mysteries in general. Who are these gods and goddesses? And like you said, the energy of them, certainly the energy of them is something that you can commune with. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female in this lifetime, as we know, our souls are, every energy, masculine and feminine. So why can't you connect to a goddess versus a god, right? In this lifetime, I think that's a really great distinction. But I would really love to hear, what is your take on these gods and goddesses? You've mentioned obviously the pantheon of the Egyptian gods. Sounds like you may have connected to some other pantheons. Who do you think these people were, are? Are they people? Are these energies? What's your take on it, Oliver?
So my take on this is quite simple. It's, if we're all these spirits and souls that come down here on earth, and these are those that have gone before us. So in fact, actually, funny enough, It was last night. I was actually connecting, communicating with Isis, goddess of the left, and in the distance, I heard my daughter laugh, and she's 12 years old and full of joy and bubbly, and Isis came to stroke and said, "Oh, I just love the sound of that voice, so pure, so free. It reminds me of the times I was walking on the Egyptian hot sand, on the sands of Egypt, and my feet were burning, but we were still laughing and in joy." Her obviously as a young child, about the same sort of age, and I actually felt myself almost welling up. It's like my eyes started. I was like, "Oh wow, right? You have lived or had an experience on Earth, but you've also kept going. You've kept growing. You've kept changing. You've kept like we are. We don't stop growing. We don't stop changing. We keep growing year by year. We keep hopefully getting wiser and wiser. We keep learning. We keep expanding. We keep changing who we are. And so they have as well. So when you connect to these deities, these energies, these gods or goddesses, you're connecting to an energy of them right now, not necessarily the energy of what was written about them 100 years ago. And so as we move through, as you connect them, you're connecting them at a higher level, as a more wiser, more evolved spirit compared to the story that might have been written 1,000 years ago about them. And for me, that was really so that it meant that what I was experiencing when I connected to be the real experience for me, what they needed to show me and what I need to show them. And one thing that she really has taught me is that we are all equal. There's gone are the days where you bow down to someone to worship them. They are equals to us. We are equals to them. But we need to approach them like equals. And through that process comes this real closeness, this real friendship, if you will. Whereas you don't necessarily see them, you sense the energy, you connect with that energy, you hear the message, the story, whatever it might be, the process you're going through. But it's a connection where light comes to light and you learn from each other. You learn from each other. I've been writing stuff for one of my programs, and she said to me, "Oliver, I think you should call it magic." And I'm like, "No, that's not me. I'm not going to call anything magic, right? I'm the sort of practical guy. I'm an ex-rock climber. I'm not going to start getting all woo-woo on people by calling what I do magic." And she said, "Okay, fine, no problem." 3 years later, what do I call my courses? Magic 1, Magic 2, Magic 3, Magic 4 coming soon. Okay, so I've learned that they'll respect you. They'll also take your input, and it's a two-way conversation. And so it goes backwards and forwards, and so it has to. I remember the first time I connected to Jesus. Now, not being religious at all, coming from a religious school, but not believing in that at all, I was doing a meditation a few years ago, and we connected to a being. I didn't know who it was. I wasn't in charge. I got there late. I wasn't really paying attention. And as I made this connection, I found myself doing somersaults of joy and going up to this being, and I couldn't really see them very clearly, and give them a great big old hug. And then after the session, people were going around the room saying, "Oh, we're so respectful. It was so great to be in this presence." And they were so humble, and they were bowing down and kissing his feet. And then eventually I went, "Well, that wasn't what I was doing." Then I asked the question, "Sorry, who was that, by the way?" And they said, "Yeshua." And I went, "Well, I don't understand who Yeshua is. Who is that?" And they said, "That's Jesus, another name for Jesus." And then I kept quiet, because I wasn't going to tell them that I was jumping for joy and giving a brother a hug. And it was only much later when I really connected again, that I realized that we are brothers, yet in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense from a human brain point of view, but there is a likeness, that there is a sharing of energy. It's not about religion. It's about meeting someone who you have a connection with, and you become like brothers. And so this is how these relationships build as you go through the process of awakening yourself and shifting yourself and changing your beliefs about what's possible. This is how you get to this point.
Wow. Wow. I love that. It's you hear about people channeling, right? And you hear about these entities coming through, but everyone always experiences them a little bit differently. And I really appreciate that perspective, Oliver, because long gone are the days of hierarchy, in my opinion. And we go
Yeah.
through these long cycles of time, as are known in the Vedas, like the Yuga cycles, or in the Greek times, it's the Great Year, or essentially it's that 25,000 year cycle, right? And we've just
Mm.
moved out of the was it the Kali Yuga, I believe, the Iron Age, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
And since moving out of that, that means we're now out of the age of hierarchy, which means these gods that were once worshipped, kissing their feet, looking up to them, that's no longer the relationship. It's an equal playing field. And it's the
Yeah.
same with, our extraterrestrial visitors, angelic
Absolutely. Yes.
beings, right?
Yes.
It's the same with all of these, with among ourselves as humans, right? There's no more hierarchy. It's equal playing field. And that's something that's really exciting, but also something that people are really having to wrap their heads around more now. And I would imagine with your work, that's probably one of the things that might come up for you, right? Is like you said, how are we taking these old ideas, but that was in the paradigm of worshiping
Mhm.
or of hierarchy. How do we
Not,
take them
not
into
being
this?
worthy. I think that worthiness is the big one.
I think you're right, right? So is that it's a self inner journey more than anything nowadays, right?
And the way I really look at it is you've got to clear space. So if we've got, let's say I've got this sort of belief that I'm not worthy. This is not the first time you've experienced that, right?
Yeah.
You've been not worthy as a toddler, perhaps, right? When you got glared at by a mother, an aunt, a grandparent who didn't want to feed you when you were hungry, and all
Hmm.
you wanted was love, and you felt not worthy. Then as a toddler in the playground, right? Then as a teenager, and as a young adult, and then whatever age you are, just keeps going up. These are not new experiences. And also, then you think about, if I decided not to be Oliver the healer, I could be Oliver infinite number of other things. So, but in all those infinite other possibilities of who I could be right now, there's going to be the sense of not being worthy somewhere along those lines, in those timelines. And then we go back past lives, future lives, other dimensional lives or planes of existence where this being Oliver, this soul Oliver exists. There's going to be this energy of not being worthy. So what if we have a technique that starts to clear that not being worthy from all those planes of existence in one go? And when you do that, you can really shift who you are very, very quickly. And that is the etheric trauma release method
And I
in a
and I
nutshell.
I love that, Oliver. Like I want us to walk through that in a second and just a little bit more, because I think this is again, we're talking ancient wisdom fused with modern, techniques. I keep thinking of quantum physics as you're talking, because we're
It's
living
exactly
it.
it. It's quantum physics, but
There it is.
it's doing it from a human perspective without us going into the heaviness and the intellectual bit. I'm taking it down to the very basics. Humans are very good at making things very complex.
Yes.
To make me feel better, I'll make it really complex so you don't understand it. Makes me look good, okay? But actually, it's really simple, right? It's really simple. You put your hand in the fire, you burn yourself. You don't
Mm.
keep putting your hand back into it. But with not being worthy, you keep testing it to see if you're not worthy. I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. You keep burning yourself over and over again. So let's stop that burning and let's clear it from all aspects of you, so that you are then able to go, I might feel not worthy right now, but I know that I am worthy and I do deserve this. And the world
See,
around you starts to change.
and that's one of the things I've encountered the most a lot with my life, is it's not a matter of always having these epiphanies, these downloads that change your life forever. It's actually clearing out the existing programs that are inside of yourself, right? That have likely been the most powerful ones, typically the ones that have been there the longest. And like the self-worth is a great example, because I think everyone goes through that at one point in their life. If not, that could be their biggest challenge, let's say, in this lifetime. And it's not until we can clear it out that we then get out of our own way, because it's that program, that's the thing that self-sabotages us without us knowing, because it's running the show in the subconscious. And it's until we can clear that through, your methodology, through other methodologies, whatever that is for
There's
the
plenty of ways
individual,
out there to do it. Yeah, there's plenty of
for
ways out to do it.
yeah, and there's plenty of ways for me. Sound and music have been a big one for myself as a musician. That's been a huge part of the journey. Of course, yeah, there's just so many ways to do it. But I think what we're getting to here is that it's the power is in the individual now to be able to do this. Yes, with the help of someone like you, Oliver, or myself, or whoever. But it's really coming back to the self empowerment of you can do this, yourself. Because, like you said, with clearing out these programs, the way I interpret that is it's also just getting out of your own way, right? So I would love to learn more about your method here, and maybe you could walk us through this idea of the four elements that you're working with here: earth, water, air, fire. What's that all about? How does that
So
work?
if we look at ourselves from the simplest perspective, from the ancients' viewpoint, it's earth, water, air, and fire. That's what we're made up of. The fire being the DNA, the real spark of life. Without DNA, the fire element is there. Without that, we wouldn't be who we are. The air being the mind, okay, our thoughts very, very fast, but we can also slow them down. And so that's the idea that things move around us very, very quickly. And the water element, again, being sort of more the emotional side of things, how we are emotion and we behave like emotion. The emotion comes first before the thought. We have an emotion and then we name the emotion. We don't have the name and then find the emotion. And then the earth element being actually we're here on earth. We've got these physical vessels that we are right now. We associate with. This is who we are in this world, physical world. So we've got to honor and look after these physical vessels, and also remember that we've got to be here. We're here to be physical. We're here to be grounded. We're here to be part of Earth, part of this experience. So we shouldn't spend all our time up above. We should be down here on Earth in the physical body. And so when I start to work with these four elements and getting those all balanced and solid, so grounding, clearing the thoughts, balancing the emotions, remembering that you are the spark, you are the fire, you are the element fire inside. It's not outside of you. You've got to go inside. And so when you start to open that doorway inside through a meditation, through a guided healing, through sound, through music, whatever the modality might be, you end up doing the healing yourself. So yes, there are healers out there, but all they're really doing is providing you a methodology to go in and heal yourself. And that's where the etheric trauma release method came from. And I used, it's mostly a bit of visualization, me tapping into the energy, me manipulating some of the energy around them. If there's certain things that are blocked, we clear those out. If there's sort of entities or parasites or heaviness that's been clung on to the energy field, just like we go out and have a day out and we come back feeling grimy and dirty. We have a shower to wash that off. We forget about the unseen part of us, that much bigger part of us, the aura and the space around them, and that gets grimy and dirty as well. It picks up on other people's thoughts, other people's emotions, and so we need to clear that. We clear all that together, plus the physical. Boom, changes happen super fast. And in fact, I kept being told that the changes are instantaneous. It's just the mind that slows the process down. Because so many of us have been trained to believe that healing takes time. Now, kicking a ball when you're a kid and you sprained your ankle for about 10 minutes maximum. And then you want to go and kick the ball again. So you got up and played, right? Whether it be, football, soccer, doesn't matter what it is, you want to play. So you got up and your ankle got better very quickly. These days, our ankles take 6 weeks or longer to heal because we've been trained to believe that healing takes time. We've been trained to believe by professionals in their experience and what they've done and studied that a sprained ankle is going to take you 6 weeks to heal. But that's just a belief that stops you from doing. So you change that belief and speed up the healing. And so when we start to look at the emotional body, there is no physical to fix. So we can shift and clear so fast, instantaneous, if you choose to go instantaneous. And I'm always amazed by some of my clients who are not sure. They only go so far, but those are fully open and fully trust. They really just open those doors and they just go and they let go of mountains and mountains and mountains of stuff, of trauma and stuff in one session. In 40 minutes, they just let go of stuff and they clear, and they literally physically look different afterwards. And that's the beauty of the 21st century. We're in this time, we've got all this incredible light and energy coming to the planet. It's shifting, it's awakening, it's clearing layers, it's allowing us to connect to the galactic beings. It's allowing us to develop our relationships with the unseen world, our guides, our guardians, the different pantheons of energy. There's so much that we now have access to do if we clear the physical form, clear the body of all that heaviness, all that old stuff, the old dirt that's been lying around, right? Start to polish ourselves up again so we can tune into that frequency, that higher frequency, that higher plane of existence, where they start to come in and you start to sense them and see them and know them and develop those relationships, which is so powerful and so important.
I love that. It makes me think. We talk about energy all the time in these circles, certainly on this podcast, and I think to a lot of people, it's still an ambiguous idea. What is even energy? We're talking about energy healing. We talk about all these methodologies and being able to sense energy. I think everyone on let's say, an intuitive, deeper level all know what that means. But what has your experience been, working with energy? Is how physical can it get to you? And the second part of this question, Oliver, and I know this is a tricky one to answer because what is energy, right? We can get scientific, we could get metaphysical, but I'm curious to what is your interpretation of it, and how has it been for you? And then the second part to that question is, when you're, as you just mentioned before, our planet is shifting so much. We've got a massive consciousness shift happening, our planet, with our species, with the universe. What is your interpretation of what's going on right now with all this excess of energy hitting the planet, hitting us, activating us, our DNA, et cetera? How does that bring us into this new modern age, let's say, new Earth, as they call it?
The new Earth starts with you. I think
Hmm.
that's the first thing to start with, is that the new Earth is you. The new Earth is not outside of you. It's not there. It's not somebody else is not doing it. It always starts with you. You have to want to accept the energy. You have to want to change. And I always think of energy like water. Water is very slow. It can move over a piece of rock and flows over rock, and eventually it starts to carve its way through the rock. It doesn't happen instantaneously. Okay, but if you add your energy into that, you can start to make this flow much better, direct it more to where it needs to go to. And that's how we can use energy that's flowing, that's coming to this planet, and we can start to direct it into ourselves where we need to go, or into certain areas of our life where we need energy. Then we can start to allow that energy to shift and push and erode that heaviness. So when you want to change, when you want to feel energy, then you'll start to feel it. Is it always around us? Absolutely. It's always there. But where is the most powerful energy? It's inside of you. Some would say it's the heart. I would say go deeper into the heart, go deeper, go into that infinite space inside of you. You'll find the power there. You'll find all the power, all the energy that you could ever want right inside of you. And you can only use what you need to use. And just like around us, it's also outside of us. The energy's around us. Okay, we're surrounded by it. We have the sun every day shining this beautiful energy. We have star systems sending light to the planet that's taking over many thousands of years to get here. It's all light codes that are starting to activate and awaken people. But you always have a choice. Every single one of us has a choice. And I think most of us are starting to realize now that the old ways don't work anymore. They're not as good or as simple as the new ways, right? Like if I go back to the book example, I can order a book online, and these days it'll take 2 weeks to arrive. If I'm lucky, it might be a couple of days. Or I could just hit download and start reading within about 10 seconds, or listening to that book in the same sort of time. So we've always got a choice. But I think most people are going, we've tried so much of the old stuff, and we've got some gains, but it's not fast enough because I want to keep up with the world. I need to keep up with the world. We've got to keep changing. We've got to keep reinventing ourselves. Now, I can't reinvent you, the listeners. I can only reinvent me. And when I reinvent me to a being that wants to use this energy, that has this idea of using energy to change me and the world around me, then it also changes the world around me, or those others in the world around me. And that is, I guess, my definition of energy. It's magic. It's magic. We can use it, change it. It's the definition of magic is taking something and turning into something else, or taking nothing and turning into something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what energy does. We can take this energy, which we can't see, and turn it into something and change ourselves. When I change me, my world gets better, or I could do the opposite and make it, and my world gets worse. And I go, oh, wait, that didn't really work. So we know that doesn't work anymore. I could choose to jump back into it if I choose to, but hey, that's too much like hard work. We want to better my life. I think you would find it very hard to find someone on this planet who doesn't want to better themselves. They might be stuck and not know that they want to, but everybody's trying to do something to better themselves, to work harder, to get more money, to better themselves or their families. I don't think there's anybody out there that's not trying to do that. That's so throw it away. Well, I might be wrong. There might be someone like that, but majority of us are always trying to better ourselves, either for our families, but you have to be looking after yourself before you look after your family. Because if you're not looking after yourself, you can't look after your family.
Exactly. It's that classic analogy of the oxygen mask in the airplane.
Yeah.
We heard that 1,000 times, but it's so true. It works because it's the most, again, everyone can relate to that, and it makes sense. It's literally science at that point. You come first, always. Doesn't matter, and I have many friends who are parents, and they've come to me saying, like, Chris, I feel bad for putting myself in front of my children. I'm like, well, you are and you're not. Of course your children matter. Of course they're going to be very, very dear and important to you, and you'll prioritize them as such. But again, you can't help them the way you want if you haven't helped yourself first. So it always goes back to you, regardless of what your responsibilities are. And, on that note, Oliver, I would love to maybe grab some of these little bits of wisdom that we can distill or that we can give to our audience here. I would love to hear maybe like your top 3 little tips on the day-to-day life as human beings, as we are in this ascension journey. What are some of like the essentials that you have come across that really have helped you on your journey? Let's say maybe from a more holistic and health perspective, as we continue to grow, as our awareness continues to expand. What are the tools that have really, really helped you that you could share with our audience today?
Okay, this one will probably shock people, but it's to be selfish. To be selfish, not to be selfish to hurt anybody. Okay, that's not right, but to be selfish with your time and your energy. So many people just want to give and support and to help and to help and to help and to help, and they just let their batteries go completely flat. And what they're giving out is not worth taking or receiving. So be selfish. Be selfish with your energy, with your time, but at the same time, still be unselfish, be giving. That's tip number 1. You've got to look after you first. So selfish. The second one is be mindful of where you go. We all know that if there's a dark alley and it's my shortcut home, I probably don't want to go down it. Okay? So be mindful about where you're going, where you find yourself. If you find yourself with a group of people that just are not your vibe, then get out of it. Leave it. Because they'll just bring you down to whatever level they're at. We cannot change a dark situation. It's like if you're this beautiful, bright, white being of light, and you go into and you want to help people, but you're going into the pits of hell, the swamp, you're not going to survive in there. You're better off finding your tribe elsewhere. And maybe one or two of that dark swamp eventually come to your tribe. It's like this beautiful white feather going to change a dirty pool of oil, and it drops itself into the pool of oil, and no matter how hard that feather tries, it will never stay clean in that oil. So that's step number 2. So, don't go, trust where you're going, trust your intuition, stay out of the places you shouldn't be. I guess the third step is, for me, is really love. Love yourself. You have to love you, because no one else can love you. Yes, they can love you, the persona, the personality, the individual, the clothing, the style, the height, the muscles, the whatever it might be that they love about you. But only you know what's happening in here. It's only you knowing what's happening inside your physical body, the scars, the twitches, the bad, whatever it might be, the whatever you have that you don't like about yourself. You have to love it. You have to love that ugly part of you, because no one else knows about it, and no one else knows what's happening inside your mind. So you have to love you, all of you. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge. But make an effort every day to love the ugly parts of you. All the ugly parts, the emotions, the thoughts, the parts of your body that you don't like. Learn to love the ugly you. And when you love the ugly you, because the ugly you is part of you, you can't take it away. You can't take an ugly chunk of you and throw it away, an ugly thought and throw it away. It's part of you. It's part of who you are. It's made you who you are. Without that ugly part, or that dark part, that shadow part, you'd fall over. You wouldn't be who you are. So love you before you start to love everybody else. And when you really love you, then you start to send that love out into the world, and then you'll start to match. Others will match that energy with you. Others will match that love energy with you. So those are my top 3, hopefully fairly simple tips to do. It would take a little bit of work.
I love that. The last one that you touched on, Oliver, it really is a fundamental. I think it's self-love, right? And sounds simple enough. I'm pretty sure most of our listening and viewing audience can agree that not as easy as it sounds. It's probably one, right? Especially in our current day and age, it might be one of the hardest things that a lot of us have probably weren't even aware. I mean, I know for myself, my self-talk throughout my 20s was horrific, and I wasn't even aware of it. Because to me, I had justified it as, well, I'm just a perfectionist, or I'm just trying to do the best job I can possibly do out there in whatever pillar of life I'm referring to here. But then that means, then I'm allowed to talk really terribly to myself. And it wasn't until, a therapist of mine, mid-20s or so, told me, he's like, well, Chris, how do you talk to your friends, your close loved ones? And I'm like, well, yeah, obviously I'm really nice and considerate. And he's like, all right, why aren't you doing the same to yourself? And I was like, I have no answer to that.
Went on,
right? One of those classic moments, right? Where you just sit there just dumbfounded at the almost idiocy that you just kind of feel in that moment, but in a really good way of just, wow, yeah, why am I doing that? And so, of course, then after with that epiphany, with that knowledge and that awareness of, oh, my really negative self-talk, okay, let's try to reverse that. Now, that took quite a few years of consistent practice to really reverse that habit that had been formed from a very, very young age. And I really recommend, of course, everyone watching and listening to this, like, we're going to give Oliver's info, check him out, connect with him on these amazing modalities he shared today. But without giving too much of your the gold away, Oliver. I would love just to get a quick bit of advice from you on specifically self-love, because I really do, that hits home for me, and I know it's going to hit home for a lot of people. What's one thing that someone can do, to help with that? Because it's one thing to say love yourself more. Okay,
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
right? But how, if I've got those programs deeply running the show?
It's actually, you hit nail. It's not as easy. It is easy. It's not easy, but it is easy. It's the starting that's the hardest part. It's much easier for us to go, oh, it's my heart. I don't want to deal with it now. I will deal with my heart later when I've got time. So the challenge is actually to go, no, I've got 5 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start to look inside of me. So I'm going to start to use my imagination to start to look inside of my own heart, to look inside my heart and see what I see and see what happens inside there. Because when you start to go inside of you and you see things, you might see a memory, a time in your life where something happened and your heart got broken. You can look at it and go, oh, okay, I want to reclaim that energy. So when I start to first look at the heart, I realized that every time we have a heartbreak, a small little bit of our energy gets lost. And our hearts break over and over and over and over again. From when you're in the high chair starving and think no one loves you because you're not being fed, to the time in the playground where you're playing kiss catch and nothing happens, or when you're a teenager and you really start to feel that heart emotion, your heart breaks then. And then as an adult, the real heartbreak's starting to happen, and there's loss and all different types of heartbreak. We're losing bits of energy all that time. So what if you went inside, found an image inside your heart, and start to reclaim all that lost energy, to reclaim all that lost energy? Not by naming it, not by going to every scene, not going to every heartache, but saying, I'm going to reclaim all that lost heart energy. This is you talking to you, by the way. You talking to your heart, in your heart, sitting there imagining your heart, reclaiming all that lost heart energy that you've lost over time. And as you start to reclaim all that lost heart energy, it comes together. It starts to reform it in your heart. It starts to re-heal the heart. And when you start to re-heal the heart, it starts to affect the soul. So in that process, you start to balance both your heart and your soul, and the two can come back into alignment. And then you're much more moving forward on your path. So 5 minutes, going inside, finding that scene, and then reclaiming the heart energy, the lost heart energy, the lost love. And through that process, emotions will come up. Of course they will. And there'll be times where you're like, screw this, I'm not going to do it. That's also okay. But you've got to start the process. And once you start, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Simple, but not so easy.
Yeah, but ultimately simple, and I think that's an encouraging thing for those out there that are maybe newer to this journey. Maybe you're watching Ancient Mysteries Unearthed, everyone, or whoever you are listening, watching, and you just discovered this because it's interesting content, and now you're watching this, and okay, here we are. Or maybe you've been watching us for a while, and you're deeply, deeply on the journey, maybe for many years of awakening and enlightenment, self-improvement, self-development. Regardless of where you are in the journey, I think one of the biggest things for me is recognizing that it's a journey and we don't really have a destination. Because from my perspective, Oliver, and this might be different, please let me know if it is, we're really here to experience. And I think when we experience the challenges, that's just as positive or just as important as experiencing the bliss and the joys, right? Because we don't learn without our shadow. That's the thing, is there is a whole reason the yin and yang, or the yin and yang, exist, for that matter, is because we live in a dualistic, balanced reality, or at least a reality that's trying to always balance itself, right?
And you can't take one piece of it out and throw it away, because then you don't have the balance, do you?
Right. And I think it's trusting that every step we've taken in this life was not a waste. And it actually has a really important purpose when you do these exercises, like you just suggested, to go in. I like to, when I've done stuff like that, I sometimes like to use the element for myself, as we're talking about these elements earlier. I like water, and I find being in a shower or a bath of some kind really helps me process these emotions. I guess the literal metaphor of the emotional water energy, right? And I set a little intention before, and I've had some profound healing experiences just doing that with with myself, and going into those different ages, perhaps of maybe my inner child, or whatever it is. And it's incredible. What have you, before we wrap up this fascinating episode, what have you, my kind of last question for you, and well, maybe last question for you.
Well, let me just say so one thing. I say one thing
Please.
about, you talked about intention.
Yeah.
Intention is incredibly important.
Mm.
Without intention, you can't do anything. And you can't take somebody else's intention and use that. You've got to have your own intention. So you go for your bath, you want to process the water element, and your intention is to face that, address that, heal that, clear it. So you've got to have your intention. And your intention is more powerful if you speak it out loud. And that is the key. Speaking your intention out loud. Okay?
I once heard.
Because our
Go ahead.
thoughts,
Yeah.
have
No, yeah.
a little bit of power. But what I'm thinking right now, you haven't got a clue. And I can stare in your eyes and go, I'm sending you thoughts. And you're going, I'm not getting them. Okay. But if I went, hey, Chris, I'm going to tell you something about intention, you're going to go, oh, okay. So they're already. So when I'm creating this intention, yes, I want to think about what the intention is going to be. The intention to heal my heart. But then I'm going to speak it out loud, because I'm using my intention, which comes from our sacral, our hara energy. It comes up past our heart, where we start to feed our love into it. And then we use our own life force, our own breath, to manifest those words, to make them into a vibration, which then heads out into the world around us, into our universe. And that is how you use your intention to change and shift far quicker than going,
It makes me think of, I've heard this definition once. I'm not sure if it's correct, so everyone in the comments, give me a break here, okay? But I think it translates something like, so you're talking about magic, of course. Magic, the idea of magic, I think, stemmed from places like ancient Egypt, probably even earlier, maybe Atlantis, who knows, right? But essentially, the core principle of magic is exactly what you say. It's attention with intention. So it's placing that focused attention with a specific intention in mind to create an outcome, to create a manifestation, right? And I heard the definition of abracadabra actually translates to, as I speak, I create, which I think is really, really interesting, and kind of plays into what we're talking about now with the quantum physics, with how you bringing all this metaphysical concepts down into a more practical realm. It really is, like you just said, it's the power of the voice with the intention. And I love how you just described that whole process, because it really is essentially alchemical, right? This is
absolutely,
alchemy.
yes. Yeah. It's alchemy right there. Yeah, absolutely. Alchemy. And you are the magician.
Mm. Yes, exactly. So I love that. So, with everything that you've done, what has been maybe one of the more fascinating, for lack of a better term, testimonials or experiences that someone that you've worked with has had? Because I'm sure there's just the transformation you must witness. Powerful could be the only word I can think of.
Yes, and a lot of people hear me saying, I don't believe in miracles, I rely on them. And I see this all the time in my work. But I think when we're talking about the heart, one that has always sort of stuck out, and was one of my earlier clients, was a gay man who's living in London. And when he told his family that he was gay, they sort of disowned him, and they wouldn't have anything to do with him. And that's what caused him to move to London, and where he was happy, and met a lovely partner, and they're still very, very happy together. Both good friends of mine now. And after a session with me, we were really focused on healing the heart, healing that broken heart. He went back to his home country, and he then had his little flat which he was working on. His mother was in the flat next door. Communication was difficult. There was no sort of acceptance. And just before he left to come back to London, he said to his mother, "You know, I love you." And when he said those words, she broke down and healed the relationship right then and there. And the catalyst was him healing his own heart so that he could say those words to his mother, which then rippled on to healing her and then fixing the family relationship. So for me, that is one of the most powerful stories about when you heal your heart, how that will ripple out and affect those that you love and maybe are a little distance to around you. So that's my key story.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. It reminds me of I'm obsessed with near death experiences, had a couple myself, and
Oh, yeah, yeah,
you
me
know,
too.
as we do on this journey, right? You gotta almost die a couple times, I think.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
ego death, physical, it's all good.
It's
Uh,
almost like an initiation, isn't it?
you know what? I mean, I know that that's a big part of a lot of ancient initiations was inducing a near-death experience, essentially,
Yeah,
right? For these initiates, and I absolutely understand why now. And what's fascinating, what I've heard from a lot of near-death experiencers, which is it's very well cataloged these things, and I worked a conference last year just down in the States with Neil from Portal to Ascension, and we it's a near-death experience conference, one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the world. Fascinating to be in a room full of hundreds of people who died and come back to life. Quite the experience. Anyway, one of the things I talk about when you have your life review, which is a very common thing for a lot of these our souls when we leave our body, transitioning to other, the next stage of reality, we get to experience that ripple effect that our hearts and our energy has on everyone, for good or for worse, for light and for dark, for all the possible variables. We get to experience all of them, and we experience that butterfly effect, that ripple effect of what we've had on the world we've lived in. And it is, like you said, it's amazing how once we heal these parts of ourselves, it just ripples outwards. And all of a sudden, this damaged relationship with maybe your parents or a loved one or whoever, all of a sudden kind of gets repaired or
yeah.
evolves into a way you never thought possible. So,
You
this is
didn't
the
have to do anything.
no, but
You
you
didn't
did,
have to go out.
you know,
You did have to do something. Oh, yeah, okay, but you didn't have to go out and change them.
no.
And that's so often we're trying to fix the person outside of ourselves, fix
Mm.
those around us, rather than fixing yourself.
I mean,
I
just
get a lot
look
of
at
people
the
come.
internet, social media, right? Everyone's yelling at each other. It's just like, okay, but I think there's a little bit of projection going just a tiny bit.
A lot of people say, will you help my child? And I go, well, I can work on your child, but I'm going to work on you first. Otherwise, I won't work with your child. And it's usually that the parent has a lot more issues that the child is just mirroring back at them, the perfect
Mm.
mirror, right? And they go, fix my child, but I'm still screwed up. No, 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 no. We'll fix the screw up. And guess what? Your mirror will suddenly start changing, okay? And won't need the session. Yeah. Yeah.
It just goes back into this quantum reality. It's an observer-based reality, meaning I always use the video game analogy. I love games, love video games. So it's such an obvious thing. You are the player of this avatar in the game. You get to dictate really what happens, and more importantly, how you respond to things, right? So this is it, folks, watching and listening. You've just been gifted the keys to a beautiful life here with Oliver Dolby. Thank you so much, Oliver. I really appreciate all the fantastic information, beautiful stories. My heart's very full after speaking to you for this hour here. And
Well,
why
thank
don't
you.
as just a final little thought, could you leave our viewers, listeners with just some final thoughts? Like, we're recording this in October of 2025, a lot going on in the planet. There's a lot going on for those that are on the ascension journey. And there's going to be a lot of people tuning into this that are like, what's an ascension journey? So for the human, race right now, what do you feel we need to hear? What is this next stage looking like for us? It's a pretty important time right now.
It's a huge time for everything. And so many, people are touching on it. There's so many people channeling about it. But I always like to keep things simple and as simple as possible. Otherwise, we get weighed down with our mind and worry and fears and things like that. Is what you're doing right now bringing you joy? Is it making your life happy? Is it fulfilling you? If it's not, what can I do to change it slightly? Not to change it completely, just to change it slightly so it'll start to bring me more joy. Am I smiling? If I'm not smiling, what can I do to smile more? Because that's when we know we're on our right sort of path. For me, the more I've gone on my journey rather than trying to follow someone else's journey, the more joy I have in my life, the more happiness. Doesn't mean every day is perfect. No, there's still the bumps in the road. But the more I do what I do, the more joy I have. The more I try to follow other people's ideas and things and theories, the more I'm not listening to me. And I can and that's when I don't find that joy. So it's all about joy. Joy. Is it bringing you joy? Can you find that joy? Can you find that excitement? Is it something that you're really passionate about? The more we follow our passions, the more the world opens up to us, the more coincidences start happening, the more people that are similar, like-minded will start to find you, sort of want to be around you, work with you, share similar stories. It's really about just following that little bit of excitement that you have, that little bit of things that bring you joy. And that's a twist. That's what wakes things up. And I think that's the easiest way. You always have a choice. If it feels heavy, try and do less of it. And I know for some of us, we have to do the heavy stuff. We do, yes. But always try and find and balance it with the stuff that brings you joy. And then that will start to open up the doors to more excitement, more fun, more passion, more joy.
Beautiful. I completely agree, and it makes me think of, we were given passions for a reason, and we all have different passions for a reason. And I think that if all of us were just, you know, I can't help but think about our school system sometimes with this, where it just gets beaten out of us, in so many ways,
Yeah,
right? And it's just by the end of those 12 years, just of public school alone, let alone post secondary, these other things that are have a lot of benefit in some ways, absolutely, and also can be so detrimental in many, many other ways, because it really is this idea of yes, one, we're creating this reality for ourselves, and two, it's just I don't know, it's we when we get these things beaten out of us, metaphorically or physically at such a young age, it
there's both. I think actually, in my time, it's both.
yeah, and that's why I mentioned it, because you know what I mean? Like it really is. You start to realize how much these traumas are informing our day-to-day reality. And when we can just add in, like, wait a minute, this is what blows my mind is a lot of people don't know what they even like. Like
Yeah,
we're so inundated with being in survival mode and this fight or flight, which isn't anyone's real fault. It's a crazy reality, and it takes a lot of discernment and a lot of time on this journey of awareness just to know what we're even dealing with and kind of working against, working with, and navigating that can be challenging. However, if you just stick to almost this internal GPS of your emotions, I really believe that's why we have them, and follow them to lead you to these different places and these passions. Like, the passions will take you on this journey that's going to be unknown 100%.
absolutely. Yeah,
but
unknown,
i'm
completely unknown. Do I know where
un-
I'm going? Haven't a clue.
No, none of
Yeah,
us do. None of us do. Even
no.
the most intelligent have no idea. But I think that's the point, is to be okay with that. And when we're doing things that we're passionate about, it's like we don't really care where the destination even is anymore, because we're in love with the day to day. We're in love with the process. We're in love with the journey. For me, I'm fortunate enough to be working in things like podcasts and sacred site tours and music that just light me up. So when I'm doing my taxes, as an example of something I don't like to do, I can I've never had more fun doing my taxes than I have nowadays, because it's for my own business and it's for things I care about and things that I really enjoy. And I can just take that joy and attach it to things like taxes, and not so bad to do anymore.
Yeah.
And
Or in
you know
my
what I
case,
mean?
I just give it to my accountant, and I watch my accountant light up. He gets a smile on his face, and he's so passionate about taxes and how to save taxes and figure things out. It's like Christmas treat, to him. Whereas I'm going like, well done, fantastic, go for it. It's
Well,
brilliant.
we're all geared to do specific things, and I believe as an organism, as a
Yeah,
humanity, if we're all pursuing our given passions, it'll all work together perfectly.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
it's just about eliminating those blockages like you encounter all the time, right, Oliver?
There's a person who's passionate about every single thing. The things that you're not passionate about, sweeping the street, doing laundry, doing ironing, doing cleaning the draining system of underground in the city or something. There are people who are passionate about that. They love it. Just like the people who are passionate about taxes, and I guess those people that are passionate about spiritual awareness and growth and enlightenment, to use an old word. And so that's great. So there's always someone that will be passionate about spreadsheets,
Yeah.
that exist, and they get excited about it, and that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what's so amazing about this world. We all have an important role here, and it's not to say that any of them are higher and lower. As we started the conversation with, we're all seen as equals, whether you're the person who's pulling the weeds out of the pavement in the street, or you're the person painting the house, fixing the roof, or living on the yacht. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're all equal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Thank you, Oliver, for everything. Why don't you share with our audience where they can connect with you, or how they can work with you, and if you have any upcoming things you want to tell them about?
Easiest way to work with me is through my website, oliverdolby.com. So that's the best and easiest way to get hold of me. I'm also available on most social media platforms as Soul Doctor Official, so Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I think, and LinkedIn as well. So Oliver Dolby, or Soul Doctor Official on the other channels. Yep, that's how to get hold of me.
Fantastic. So everyone watching or listening, that'll all be in the show notes below. Check that out. Follow up with Oliver. Look at it as amazing work. What a fascinating bunch of information we got to talk about today on the show. Oliver, thank you so much for being on Ancient Mysteries on Earth. I really appreciate you being here.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed our conversation as well. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Amazing. So everybody who tuned into this episode, thank you so much for watching. Little quick couple of announcements for anyone interested in the Ancient Mysteries Unearthed ecosystem here. We did start our sacred site tours, kind of just launched it recently, and it's really exciting. We're going to be going to Egypt. We just talked about it, of course, in this episode. We'll be going to Egypt in September of 2026. So check out the show notes for details on that tour. Lots of really cool stuff. The things that we talk about in most episodes, we're going to be taking that approach to ancient Egypt, communing with these sites, using a little sound activation. We got private access to things like the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the Osirion, and other places like that. And as well, we talk about sound and music a lot on these shows and these episodes. And we've also launched a therapeutic music library, which is all my music that I've composed, but nicely accessible in a library that you can just access with a monthly fee. Gives you all the royalties, all the copyright, and you can use it into your guided meditations. You can use it in your hypnosis, whatever you need. It's therapeutic music specifically designed for people most likely like the ones watching the show and digesting our content. Otherwise, for anything else that we got going on, just check out our links below. We've always got new cool events, things like that happening. But for now, thank you so much for watching this episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Until next time.